Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today I have Safeena with us. Hey Safeena.
Hey Lex, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, what's your role at Microsoft?
I'll tell you my history. I've been with Microsoft for most of my life, 13 years now in different roles. I was an escalation engineer to start with, and then a premier field engineer for a number of years, and a cloud solution architect for a number of years.
Wow.
Yeah, now I am into something that I'm really passionate about. I'm a senior program manager in cybersecurity team. It's a customer experience engineering team. We help customers unblock issues around Azure Security Center deployment and usage.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I started with Microsoft about 30 years ago, and
Wow.
I've been here ever since. I've never left, and I love every second of it.
Yeah, me too, totally.
Yeah. So today you're going to talk to us about Logic apps.
That's right. I'm going to talk to you about what are the benefits of Logic App. My topic is going to be the main focus of my topic is related to Azure Security Center, how you can remediate the recommendations from Azure Security Center with the help of Logic Apps. And without knowing how Logic Apps work, it's really difficult to even build a code and to automate some of the things. So I'm going to give you a Logic App 101 training to start with, like talking about what connectors are and so on. And then we will deep dive into Azure Security Center automation.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited about this. You know, I just did 2 taste of premieres. They haven't aired yet, but on Power Apps. So I think Logic apps will be kind of the logical next step.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
all about the logic, and there is no code. It's low code to no code feature, which anybody can do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started.
Okay, I'm going to start sharing my screen now, and let me know if you see it.
Yep. I see it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna start talking about Logic Apps. But before that, I want to set the stage. I'm gonna first try to cover. We call Logic Apps as a serverless technology. So I'm gonna walk you through what does it really mean by serverless, how easy it is to use connectors in Logic App, and then I will talk about the flow control, some of the controls that we have that you can use to make the job easier, and how seamless it is to do a DevOps integration. I'm going to talk about that. And then I will shift to the main focus of today's presentation on how we can benefit from Logic Apps to secure our organization security posture with the help of Azure Security Center.
Okay.
Sounds good?
That sounds awesome. Hey, I'm going to turn my camera off, so don't be alarmed. Yeah, I haven't dropped the connection or anything. I'm just going to turn it off so that it doesn't take up as much bandwidth.
No problem. I just kept you here on top of my screen so that I can keep watching your picture.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, let's get to it then.
Okay, perfect. So I want to first start talking to you about the full integration, how Logic Apps is going to work with Azure ecosystem. So if you think of digital transformation and what products or services can help in digital transformation, Azure Logic Apps and API management are core to the digital transformation because it's all about connecting data and devices. That's the integration I'm referring to here. Integration is really a backbone of digital transformation. I'm sure you agree on that.
Yep.
And Azure Logic Apps is a cloud service that will help you schedule, automate, and perform orchestration tasks and make your business processes jobs easier with the help of workflows. And you can integrate with apps, data, systems, services across the organizations. So that's what Azure Logic Apps do. a huge focus on security, IoT, and there are a number of connectors which I'm going to discuss about in the next slide, which will help you make all this magic happen. And I spoke to you about how this logic apps, you don't have to write code in many cases. Like I said, logic apps are codeless. But if you are passionate about coding, you still can do it. You can create code snippets with Azure Functions and then run that code on demand with from logic apps. So say, for example, your logic apps need to interact with events from Azure services or custom apps or any other solutions for that matter. And you can also use Event Grid with your logic apps if you're trying to do event monitoring or routing or even publishing any particular logic. Okay. These are the platforms that's integrated with Logic Apps, and I always encourage customers to visit our customer stories. So I want to quickly take you to that screen. So customer stories, either browse through Azure Security Center or browse through Azure Logic Apps. In order to learn how companies improve their agility and increase their focus on their core business when they combined Logic Apps with other services, be it Azure Security Center or any other Azure service that we have in the Azure. So this is a great to-go place that I always refer my customers to. Okay. Moving back to my presentation. Okay. So this is a diagram that I just copied from from the Azure Docs. Basically the reason of me having this here is I wanted to talk about the power of Logic Apps. It comes from diversity of pre-built components and how their ability to work together, right? So the picture here shows very few of the services that you can use in Logic App, but there are many. You can refer to the Azure documentations, and I'm also going to walk you through the connectors that you can use. And these components that you're viewing here on the screen can be connected in any pattern you need. You can add conditional statements and loops, and then add your decision making to your app, which will make this integration very seamless. And like I said, you don't need to know the code. All you need to know is what you are trying to do. Say, for example, I can give you an example of Twitter. Say I want to watch when a new tweet is posted in the Twitter, right? I want to watch it for that specific tweet. So what I can do is I can use Twitter connector, and then I can use Outlook connector. So Twitter connector is going to watch the Twitter app, and then the Outlook connector will be used in order to send an email to you. So this is how the connectors work together.
So hang on. So that'll happen all automatically?
Yes, that'll happen automatically.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
With no
connectors
code.
are very powerful with no code at all.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm going to show you a demo as well on how this works. So we call Logic Apps as a serverless technology because it works natively in a serverless fashion. So when you deploy Logic App, you don't have to worry about what service it's running on, or you don't have to worry about managing it or patching it or even updates. There is no infrastructure cost as well. As long as you have the Logic App, whenever the Logic App triggers, only then you will be charged. Apart from that, there's no infrastructure cost. And when you think about DevOps, right, the event driven scale is very low. What I mean by this is it gives you less DevOps to worry about. You are just worrying about the service itself. It gives you the ability, to bring your own APIs into the Logic App and use it as a standard connector for building your integration solution. So it's scalable and it's a very lightweight service. And you will see that in the demos. Faster to market. So if you think of it, a large part of application development is answering questions around scaling, around hosting, around monitoring solutions in order to meet the demands of the application, right? But with serverless, these questions are taken care of as a part of your solution. You can build directly, you can build your apps directly in the Azure portal. You can use either Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code if you're good at coding. Otherwise, you can just use Azure portal, and there is a very good designer view within the Azure portal with the help of which you can design and link the connectors together and get your things going. Okay, micro billing. So as I said, with Logic Apps, you are charged for your only for your usage, which we call it as consumption-based pricing model. So if the app is never used, no charges incurred, and it requires zero upfront costs. Just like any other Azure services, you don't have to pay for infrastructure maintenance because it's fully managed for you by Microsoft. So these are the three main features along with the connectors and all the goodness that I'm going to talk about in a while. But these are the main things that the application developer always worry about that is being taken care by Logic Apps. Moving on, I've spoken to you about connectors several times in the last 10 minutes or so. So I want to discuss about what these connectors are and how many connectors do we have and how it will help to get your business logic done. So connectors is really a huge part of why Logic App is so useful and productive because Logic Apps allows you to connect to huge number of different services. Like I said, Twitter is one of the example. It could be an Instagram. It could be any social media network that you want to connect to, right? Along with that, several Azure services and even non-Azure services for that matter, right? With the help of connectors, you can get that going. We have a ever growing list of connectors, and these connectors will allow you to trigger workflows, to get the data from even push data or many diverse apps on the cloud, or be it in your on-premise through different protocols. Right, we have a number of API connections. So the way you design your Logic App is you need to know what API connection that you want to use within your Logic App, and that's about it. That's the only thing you have to know, and then the logic that you want to put, and that's about it, and it will be taken care of. So if you are using software as a service, or if you're using other services in Azure, there's a whole bunch of different connectors for you. Here is a snapshot of connectors available. This is not everything. We have many more. And what is important to keep in mind is the list is always changing, and some connectors are still in preview, and there are some connectors that are not available in all the regions. So that's one important thing that you will have to know. But apart from that, we have number of connectors. So I have connector types that I wanted to spend some time on. That's why I have it in this slide. So connector types, we have built-in connectors, which are native to the Logic Apps. We have managed connectors, which are deployed and managed by Microsoft. And these connectors have triggers and actions for accessing cloud services or on-premise services. We have under managed connectors, we have integration account connectors as well, which will specifically support for B2B communication scenarios, and it will require an integration account, if you want to link to your Logic App. And then we have enterprise connectors. So if you're trying to access the enterprise systems like SAP or IBM, then you can make use of enterprise connectors. Okay, I'm going to show you a very quick demo of how when I'm using RSS connector to check RSS feed. So say, for example, when a feed item is published, send me an email. Okay, it's a very simple Logic App that I'm going to show you. But very powerful. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here to the resource groups. In order to save time, I already have the resource groups populated, but I haven't created the logic app as such because I wanted to create it now. So RSS trigger is the resource group that I want to use for this specific demo. So as you see, this is just a resource group that I have created, but I don't have a logic app yet here. So when I click on add and go to the marketplace and search for logic app, okay. So you have two options here, Azure benefit eligible, and you have create option. So depending on what your organization has, you could choose that. I'm going to choose create option. So I'm going to just name it as RSS trigger demo. Okay, I'm going to place it in the region. Remember, I talked about integration service account, right? I don't want to put that. I want to just put it in the region. And you want to enable log analytics if you want to turn on monitoring for this logic app. But in my case, I am just going to turn it off because this is a demo. So I'm going to create it. So if you see in a fraction of seconds, this will be created and it will present it to you. Okay, right here, it's done. Now, when I go to this, click on go to the service, it is loading the logic app now. Okay. This logic app is empty, like I just created it. Now, when I click on Logic App Designer, in the Logic app, I have Logic App Designer. This will give you a really good introduction video of what Logic Apps is all about, how you can use connectors and get your work going. And if you scroll down more, it will also give you list of common connectors. Or you can also click on blank logic app and start your logic based on what you are trying to achieve. And another option is clicking on category and selecting what service you are interested in. Like, for example, in my case, if I want to write something related to Azure Security Center, I will click on security. And this talks about sort by popularity or not. So these are the two logic apps I have. So since my example is really basic, so I'm just going to use a blank logic app. And I'm going to start with having RSS trigger, right? So, I think I could spend some time here. So this is the mostly used triggers in my environment, right? If I click on all.
So what's a trigger? Just explain a trigger real quick.
Yes, I'm going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, trigger is all about when you define a logic, say, for example, I am monitoring for a specific tweet in the Twitter, right? So when that tweet comes, then this logic app will be triggered.
Okay, I get it. So it's just a way to set criteria.
That is right. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I click on all, it's going to show me all the connectors that we have available. So these are the number of connectors. You won't be surprised if you see more connectors when you come back to it tomorrow. And when I click on built-in, these are the built-in connectors. There are more to it. And these are the standard connectors, enterprise connectors. And you can also, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to use the built-in connectors only. You can create your own connectors very, very easily by clicking on custom. In my case, I am just going to use a normal RSS connector. So it says when a feed is published. So I'm going to select that. So it's creating a connection for RSS. Okay. Now, say, for example, I want to monitor CNN.com, right? I'm going to put in the RSS feed URL to start with, and then it will give me options like how often do you want to check this item, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or month, year, week, second. You can go as much as you want. You also have an option to enter custom value, okay? And the next step I want to do is, if you think of it, I want to monitor for a specific trigger, right? So I will, and I want it to send me an email. So I choose an Office 365 Outlook connector, right? And we have number of actions for this particular connector, right? So I could use send an email to me. So I'm going to click on that. So Office 365 connector especially requires, it will prompt you to authenticate your identity. So you would have to manually authenticate your identity in this case. However, there are connections that require authentications different from what Office 365 is. So that is something that you will understand as you do more Logic apps. So I will give my ID and I will give my new feed. Okay. I can also use some pre-built connector outputs that's coming from the upper tweet, right? So this is a connection. So when I click on it, it's going to give me a dynamic content. This is coming from the output of the last step. So I could put feed title as an example. And this is going to be the body of my email, right? So I could say title, right? And some of the times when you click on the put your cursor here, it will not give me all the items. I should click on see more, and I will see all the outputs from the previous step. So when I can select for feed title, and I can select for primary feed link, and this is the output from the previous one. So I don't need to use the dynamic content only. I can even write expressions, right? This is too deep into Logic apps though, but this is a 101 training, so I'm going basics for now. So concatenate the text. So if you want to combine two steps together, then I could use concatenate. And if I want to reduce the length of the output that I wanted to give me, then I could use other expressions that we have available here. So these are the functions that we have available where I can define several variables and triggers, and I can go crazy. So I'm gonna click on save, and the moment I run the trigger, it's gonna go ahead and run this trigger, and it's gonna give me information in 3 minutes for CNN.com, any news that I am trying to monitor. So it's that easy. Designer, I did not do any code, if you think of it. I just combined some connectors and did an activity that I'm trying to achieve. However, if you want to look at the code, I could click on Logic App Code View. This is going to give me the entire ARM template that it has used in the designer space. So if you look at it, this is the schema, and it's using the send email v2 one. So what I'm trying to monitor is the trigger body is the title and the primary feed link, and the email is going to Safeena B address, and the rest of it are the connections that it is defining, and at the end it will define the parameters. So the entire, yes, the entire ARM template you can see right here.
Is that like a JSON file, or is it a special format, or?
It's a JSON file, yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's kind of like, I mean, to me, the thing that it reminds me of a lot, and I know that I'm way oversimplifying this, but it's like email rules almost, right? Where you get data from app A when a specific criteria occurs, and then it routes an action to whatever the other connector is.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a simple, good explanation. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, going back to the demo. So like I said, and showed it to you in the demo, we have number of you don't need to use the built-in connectors that we already have. You can also write your own custom connectors. And like you see, you can write 1,000 custom connectors per Azure subscription, right? So at times you might want to connect to some services that we don't have built-in connectors for. You can do that very easily as long as you know the API that you are trying to connect to. So in order to create the custom connector, it's basically 2 steps. If you think of it, if you look at it, though I've listed it as 5 steps, I'll explain you what it does. It's just the first step is you first generate an open API or Postman description of the API, and then you then use the API description to create your custom connector resource within the Azure portal or through programmatically PowerShell as well. And you will give your name for the connector, icon or description for each operation, and then you can start using your connector very easily. And one other additional step is if you want your connector to be popular, you can also submit your connector to Microsoft for certification. And once your connector is certified, it will be included in the set of connectors available for all the users. So everybody is going to start using your connector. So cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So Logic Apps is also event driven. You asked me a question about triggers. I said it's coming, so this is it. So now that we know about connectors, another important point is connectors can provide triggers, it can provide actions, and it can provide both actually, right? Depending on what your logic you're trying to achieve. So a trigger is the first step in any logic app, which fires when a specific event happens or when a new available data meets a specific criteria, depending on what you have defined. Say, for example, if you think of FTP connector, it has a trigger that starts your logic app. So when a file is added or modified, then that trigger will, pop up, and then the logic app will be run and the data will be sent to you. So that's exactly what triggers does. So we have few important triggers that I wanted to talk about today. That's why I have these in the slide. So the first one is recurrence or advanced scheduling triggers. So there are many triggers that Logic Apps provides that has basic scheduling capabilities so that you can set up how regularly you want your workloads to be run. So in case of complex workloads or complex scheduling, what you can do is you can use recurrence trigger as your first step of any workflow. I'll show you an example right away. What I'm doing in my example is I am using a recurrence trigger to be able to monitor Azure Security Center Secure Score. And I am trying to define a notification so that when Secure Score reduces for a certain threshold, then send me an email kind of a thing. So we have that Logic app available in the GitHub. I have it published in our GitHub repository. I wanted to show this after a while, but since we are talking about it. So Secure Score, this is our Azure Security Center GitHub repository. You will find number of pre-built scripts to monitor. I'm going to get to that more deeply in a second. But the Logic app related to recurrence that I wanted to talk to you about is Secure Score reduction alerts. And this will kind of send you an email as soon as it identifies Secure Score downgrade, right? So I already have it deployed for the sake of time. So I'm going to go back to the home and click on the resource groups and choose Secure Score Monitor is the Logic app that I'm using. So like you see here, this is my Logic app. My Logic app is using Azure Monitor, Azure Azure Log Analytics Data Collector, and it's using Office 365 to be able to send emails. So if you see, every time you write a Logic app there will be an API connection that gets created automatically. So if I take you back to the RSS trigger, and if I show you, there is an RSS connector that we used, and there is an Office 365 connector that we use. So that's why you're seeing an API connection for these two, and this is my Logic app. So depending on what you're using within the Logic app, you will have so many connectors. So I will go to my Logic app designer and I'll show you what's happening here. So I am setting a recurrence trigger because I want I want this logic app to check for 40 hours what is the secure score, right? If it finds, so it's calculating the current secure score. This is a variable that I have defined. Current secure score is a random number. I just gave it as 100, right?
Okay.
And then it's taking last scan score. And this is the email body that it is sending me, right? This is the style that I have defined, and this is the calculated result variable. And now it's trying to get the subscriptions in my account. Now it's parsing the JSON, and I'm using a for each loop. I'll talk about these in a second. And it's checking if the subscription is turned on or turned off. Then depending on that, it's going to monitor. If the subscription state is equal to enabled, only then run these. Otherwise, don't do anything, right? It's a parallel action that I have defined.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
cool.
parsing some JSON files. And the entire work that is happening is here, right? What it's doing is it's gathering the subscription ID, it's calculating the current score, it's putting it in the log analytics workspace, and it will calculate the score from the previous scan. And then if it finds that the score is less, then it's going to send you an email, right? Now let me trigger this. So if I click on a condition, right, and I have an option to click on add row, choose value, email to send, say 1. I have an option to save the logic app. So if there is any error, then it's just going to fail, okay? But this is exactly what my logic app is doing. Like you see here, I want it to be triggered for a specific duration of time, which is why I am defining it as interval here. Okay. When I run this, it's going to run the trigger, and in the overview section, I'll be able to see what's happening here. So my run was successful, and then the conditions that I have specified is false, so it hasn't sent me an email because there is no reduce in my secure score. Very useful, and if you look at it, there are just few simple steps that I had defined within my designer view. It's calculating the previous score and putting it in the log analytics workspace, and then it's looking at the current score and then trying to find if there is a mismatch. Only then send an email, otherwise don't send an email.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
So things like these you will find in the GitHub repository very easily. Okay, anything that you want to do. And I'm going to talk to you about it in a while. Moving on. Okay. I want to also speak about polling. Polling is another trigger that we have. Polling kind of, so recurrence, as you see, recurrence checks to see if, sorry. Okay. Recurrence checks to see when you define, depending on what time you want it to be triggered, then the recurrence will pop up. For polling, it regularly checks the service endpoint for new data. So when a new data exists, then the trigger will create, and then it will run the workflow depending on what you have defined. And then we have webhook is another important trigger that many customers use. It's an event-based trigger which does not depend on checking or polling regularly for new items. The trigger will wait and it will call the service endpoint, and then it will call the logic app. Say, for example, if there is a specific action that requires somebody to approve my email, right? So when somebody gets an email, the moment they click on approve, then there's something else the logic app does. So that's what webhook does. And then finally, we have request trigger, which you can create automated tasks and workflows that you can receive inbound requests from HTTPS. Okay. Okay, I wanna talk about flow control. So to work effectively with Logic App workflow, it's important to understand the utility of control flows actions. So we have several pre-built flow controls available in Logic App. These are the list of them. I want to talk about first. I want to talk about parallel execution or branches. This is a way for you to split your workflow into two separate parallel branches, so that each branch is executed separately without affecting another one. So in a logic app, you will define parallel branches. This branch will complete, and then this branch will complete independently. And until these two branches are completed, then until then the logic app waits for the next branch to be executed below that. It's really a great way to handle some exceptions with the help of parallel execution. I can actually go back to the portal and show you an example of how parallel workflows work. So I have a flow control demo. Okay, I haven't done anything. I wanted to do it here, so I clicked on parallel branch demo. So if you see, I don't have a logic app yet. So okay, if I go to the logic app designer, I'm gonna select blank logic app for now. I'm gonna choose Azure Security Center now, right? So I have Security Center alert, and I could even use, when I click on all, I search for what I'm looking for, security, I should be able to see Azure Security Center alert or Azure Security Center recommendation. So I choose an Azure Security Center recommendation. So what it does is when an Azure Security Center recommendation is created or triggered, then do this, right? So in the next step, I'm gonna define with the help of the control. So say, for example, I want to use a for each loop, and I will select output from the previous step. So when I put the cursor here, the dynamic content will open, and I could choose anything. So for example, I want to monitor for entities, right? I could search for entities, right? And the way the parallel branch works is I could click on new step here and do another for each loop, right? And I want to have another parallel action to be run here. In that case, I click on the plus sign here and add a, sorry, I was going to add a parallel branch. So this is how the parallel execution works. So I could define another control to it and do a for each loop. So if you look at it, I have, I have options to rename. Say, for example, I could use it as a parallel branch, parent branch, and use it as branch 1, and could rename this as branch 2 for better understanding. That's it,
Yeah.
right? So when a security center recommendation is created or triggered, then run this parent branch, right? After that, run these parallel branches. And I have option to run include more parallel branches by clicking on this plus sign and clicking on action, or otherwise I could combine these parallel actions and make it a new step here.
Yeah,
Could
that's
click
really
on
cool.
control.
Let me ask you a question. Can you add logic in there that says if X equals, Y, do branch 1, if X equals, Z, do branch 2?
Absolutely, you can do that with the help of expressions.
Okay.
With the
You don't
help of
have to
expressions.
demo that if we don't have time, but I just thought I'd ask because I thought that'd be kind of neat to know.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. The dynamic content will only give you information from the previous steps. It will give you the output of the previous steps. However, if you
Right.
want to do this kind of a logic, if x equals to y, then do this and so on, right? You could use it with the expressions.
Wow.
It's time consuming, so I'm going to skip that. However, I have it in my other logic app. I could show it to you very quickly how I'm using expressions.
This is so cool.
Yeah. So if you think of it, I'm not doing any code.
Right.
All I'm doing is connecting the connectors and making things happen.
Right. Yeah, no, I love it. I could see how this would be very powerful for any customer that has Azure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we have conditions, just like branches, right? In the branches, what we did is we kind of added the parallel branch. Say, for example, I am monitoring for a feed. Let's take that as that's easy to understand. Suppose I want an automation that will send me an email when a new item appears on the website's RSS feed, right? But I don't want too many emails. So in those scenarios, I can add condition statement, to send email only when a new item includes a specific string. So I could do that with the help of adding this another, say, new step, and I could click on control, and I could use this action called condition. And here I could define and or choose this value, say current item. If it is equal to, say, Microsoft, right? Only then send me the tweet, right? If it is true, then send me the email, right? I could add an action saying Outlook connector, right? And send email, right? And if it is false, then just do nothing.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that's about conditions. Okay, sorry, wrong window. Okay, we have loops as well. So loops are like iterations. So we have for each loop, the one that we used already, right?
Yeah.
Iterations in the for each loop run in the same time or in the parallel. However, you can set up sequential for each loop iterations. Like, for example, if you want to pause the next iteration in a for each loop by using a delay action, you have an option to do that as well. So if I click on new step here, I'm making this whole thing ugly. But if you click on this new step here, I have a for each loop, and I could define the setting from the previous output. And then say, for example, if I'm monitoring for a specific feed, and I could click on this three dots and click on settings. And this is the concurrency control that I am controlling. So what it does is for each iterations, if you want to run it at the same time or in the parallel, we have that opportunity to select. When I want to run it as a concurrency control, when I turn this on, it's going to run it in the parallel. And then I can define the degree of parallelism from 1 to the maximum is 50. Right?
Wow.
This is a limit to run sequentially.
Yeah. That's cool.
And finally, I also want to talk about the switch statements. So switch statements is like, say, for example, there is a request as an employee I put to my manager to approve a specific item. So an email would go to her or him, to approve a specific item or reject it, right? So in your logic app, you could define steps like, if this item is approved, then do this action. If this item is rejected, then do this action. So this kind of switches the statement depending on what that earlier action is. So we have a specific control for that. So when you click on the control, you have an option called switch. Switch is kind of tells you, like, if approved, then do this, or I do have an option to add more cases as well, right? If this is approved, then do this. If this is rejected, then do this, or otherwise don't do anything. I wanted to talk about DevOps and how you can look at the trigger history and how you can set up monitoring. So this is a Logic app artifact that I just developed. I just created in my subscription right in front of you a while ago, right? So when you click on the overview of any Logic app, you would be able to see the history of how successful it is, and if you had a failed instances, like let me show you in a second. So this is a Logic app that I am working on. So if you have failed instances that if the Logic app hasn't been able to run, then it will come up as a fail. And when you click on this failed instance, you should be able to see where it failed, what was the error message, like you see here, an action is failed and there are no dependent actions succeeded. So there, which means that there is some rule that wasn't able to run in the last steps. So it did not find a dependent action, so it fails. So when I click on next, it's going to show me what condition it is. So it's going to give me more information about what condition it is, and if I look at it, this will give me more information about. So right here, right, this is a bad request and this is exactly where it failed. So it's so easy. The monitoring is inbuilt for the Logic apps, where you can see if it was a successful run and if it was not a successful run, and so on and so forth, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. So almost like automatic debugging.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, now that I have my designer view, I could go ahead and change things here, or I could click on the code view and change my code here. Whatever makes sense for me, right? Not just this in the portal, I could even use Visual Studio tools, Visual Studio alert code or Visual Studio tools in order to make any changes in the code. So that was about monitoring, and some part of it we do have it in the alerts as well, where you can go to the alerts section and you could create a new role itself, and then you can monitor your Logic app from the alerts as well. Okay, it's all documented in our documentation. Now, moving to the next one, I wanted to talk about how the Logic apps can connect to the on-premise as well. So you can connect on-premise, you can connect hybrid, you can connect cloud applications to the Logic app. But before you can connect to the on-premise data sources from Azure Logic apps, you have to download on-premise data gateway on your local computer, and this gateway will work as a bridge that will provide quick data transfer and encryption between the data sources on-premise as well as for the cloud, to be able to talk to the Logic app. It's a very simple installation, few steps to install the data gateway, and you can take benefit of the smart integrations of the Logic app for your on-premise as well. Okay, now that was about Logic App 101. Hope you liked it. Now I want to shift to the main focus, Azure Security Center. Azure Security Center is inbuilt with workflow. There is a workflow automation that's available with Azure Security Center. So there you can trigger Azure Logic apps on security alerts and recommendations. For example, you might want a security center to send an email to specific workload owner when an alert occurs. So in that case, what I can do is I can put my Logic app in the workflow automation, and as soon as that recommendation fires up in Security Center, it will send you an email, right? So it will automatically initiate the Logic app workflow, and it will be able to give you more benefits with the help of Logic apps. And I wanted to talk about permissions. I've been thinking what. So permissions, for the permissions that you need to have for this is Logic App Operator or a Logic App Contributor, as long as you are both of it. So Logic App Operator can have read access, but Logic App Contribute contributor can create and modify the logic apps, right? So this is a small screenshot of how you can define the workloads within the workflow automation, but I'm going to take you to the portal of Security Center, and I'm going to go to the workflow automation here. So this is the place how I can add a workflow automation. I click on workflow automation and I give it a name, say logic app to monitor containers as an example. Yeah. Oh, there shouldn't be a space. Sorry. Okay. I'll make it simple. Monitor, right? Give my subscription and choose a resource group. And this is the place how I could choose security center data types. Do I want to trigger a logic app for an alert, or do I want to trigger for a recommendation, right? If I want to trigger for an alert, then I could write the alert name, say brute force attack, right? And alert severity, I could choose low, medium, or low, and then choose the subscription, and whatever logic apps that I have in my subscription, I could choose right here, and then I could click on create, right? It's as simple as that. So let me select a logic app and I click on create. So when I create it, it should show up here. So like you see, it enabled automatically, very fast, right? I could click on it and then I have option to change it if required. Okay. So I wanted to talk about our GitHub repository that we have. So you could go to github.com and Azure Security Center. This will give you access to several scripts that we have written as a team. This has information about, say, for example, if you want to calculate the pricing of Azure Security Centers, how much you will be charged and so on. We have templates about that. We have templates about calculation of your secure score. One of it I showed you already, which monitors the reduction alerts. Some of the other important artifacts that we have is like Power BI secure score report, which will kind of give you a good Power BI dashboard kind of a feeling. So all of these have been created with the help of Logic Apps. You know, and obviously we have number of PowerShell scripts that you can use, and in the security recommendations you will be able to see more information on the workflow automations. So pretty useful. Many of my customers really love it, and we as a team work very hard to give you the capability to automate the recommendations and the alerts, because at the end of the day, when you think about security, if you are attacked, you need to be fast enough in order to take care of that attack. The time, the duration is really important. The acting, how fast you act will help you get secure faster, right? One of the scripts that I wrote talking about alerts is brute force attack. Right? Say, for example, if I have if Security Center has been able to identify a brute force attack in my environment, then Azure, this workflow automation will automatically see the alert IP information. So if I click on the security alerts and if I go to any specific security alert, this might not be a good one. I'll take, let's take IoT security alert, right? My IoT hub is attacked. So it gives me alert actions. It gives me an option to take action as well. But if it was a brute force attack, okay, let's take this one. Right? It will give me a host IP from where that particular attack is coming. So the script that I wrote, which is in this GitHub repository, the brute force attack script. So what it does is it automatically adds this IP this is the affected resource, right? And so this is the IP that's trying to attack my VM. So my script will automatically add this IP into the network security group, and it will deny all the incoming traffic from that particular IP. So if you think of it, as soon as the alert is fired, Azure Security Center will automatically launch that logic app, and it will trigger the logic app, and it will apply the action. So immediate action, So the attacker really did not have any time to do anything in my VM, right? So it's very, very useful, the workflow automation. Very easy to first build the logic app, and when you have your logic app built, come here and click on add workflow automation and link it to a specific alert or recommendation, right? When you click on the recommendations, you will get the list of recommendations that Security Center has. So you could choose either of the recommendation, and recommendation state, select it, and then trigger your logic app and create it. And then you can forget about it. So it takes care of it automatically for you. And this is one of the great ways to manage your security posture in Security Center.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing. I had no idea that we had, this type of capability. So to actually see it work and to see you do it and to understand actually how easy these are for people to create, it's just amazing.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so
Wow.
much.
Wow.
And I put some resources here. It's very easy, even if you're looking to ramp up. The documentation has it all. We have some really good step-by-step documentation within the Azure portals, Azure documentations. So you could go ahead and visit it. And we have a number of trainings available as well. You can find it from here under Azure updates.
Yeah. So I think that http://aka.ms/logicapps-docs is probably where everybody should start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just said it out loud. So if you're watching this podcast or listening to it, you would know where to go.
Thank
Yeah. But listen, thank you so much. What a great presentation. Like I said, I think this is incredibly powerful, and I'm just amazed.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invite. Thank you for having me in the show. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, well, listen, it's been our pleasure, and thank you one more time. And folks, that's your taste of Premiere.